30, and I'd like to call the March 12th Athabasca County Council meeting to order. First item of business is the approval of the agenda. The items listed for that must be discussed are 2.1, all of item 4, that's 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4. Items number 6.1 and 6.2. I'd like to add 7.5, and then item 8.2 and 11.1 and 11.2. Are there any other additions or deletions? Councillor Holland?
Thank you. I'd like to add 10.1 G for discussion.
So you want to add or delete?
Well, both.
Okay,
So there'll be a report for that. But there is a deletion, pages 131 to 134 are deleted due to that. Those minutes are not approved. They shouldn't, they'll be added, the approved minutes will be added at the next.
okay. So to add 10.1 G, but to delete pages 131 to 134 from the agenda.
Yes, please.
Councillor Chamzik,
10.1 S and T, please.
10.1 S and T. S like Sam and T. Okay, Councillor Anderson, Gerlich, Cromwell. Councillor Minns.
Let's throw, what do we got here? 7.1, 7.2.
7.1 and 7.2, okay. Any other additions or deletions? Seeing none, I'll go through the list. I have number 2, number 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 6.1, 6.2, 7.1, 7.2, 7.5. I'd like, sorry, 8.1A, 8.2, 10.1 G. With the notation that we want to delete pages 131 to 134 of your agenda. And then 10.1 S, 10.1 T, and item number 11.1, 11.2. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended? Councillor Cromwell has moved. Councillor Cromwell has moved the minutes as amended. Is there any further discussion? Or sorry, the agenda, pardon me, move the agenda as amended. On the question of the adoption of the motion to approve the agenda as amended, all those in favor? And opposed? The motion is carried 8-0. The first item is the audit planning. That's for 10 o'clock. So none of the delegations we're ready for. So it would be in order to move to item number 6.1 on page 56 of your agenda. And is someone willing to move second reading of that bylaw? Councillor Chamzik. Councillor Chamzik has moved second reading of bylaw number 002-2024. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to move second reading of bylaw 002-2024, all those in.
Councillor Gerlich, through the chair, we did have a artifact from a previous bylaw. So when we built our bylaw, we built it off of another municipality. So on line number 2.3, where it says the very last 4 words bylaw of the county, it actually said bylaw of the Greenview previously. And that was County of Greenview was our template model for the bylaw. So we amended Greenview to county.
On the question of the adoption of the motion to approve second reading of bylaw 002-2024, all those in favor? Opposed? Second reading is adopted. The count is 8-0. Is there anyone willing to move third reading? Councillor Cromwell? Councillor Cromwell has moved third reading of bylaws 002-2024. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, on the question of the adoption of the motion to approve third reading of 002-2024, all those in favor? Opposed? The count is 8-0 and third reading is adopted.
Would this be a good time to put a motion in regarding financial for this particular bylaw?
think that it would make sense for that to come in as a separate agenda item so that
Separate.
everybody was prepared for it, but is there any, would that suit the table? That way, everybody has a chance to think about it before being sort of,
Right, so
Surprise.
did we just put in a notice of motion on this one for
or write something up, and
next time around?
I think that's,
Okay,
to me, that seems reasonable unless there's any objection.
okay, thank you.
We have, the next item of business is 003-2024. And this is on page 60 of your agenda. This is a bylaw to, amend fees for planning and development. Director Wilkinson, before we take on any motions, do you want to speak to it? Beyond what's written in your report?
Good morning. Yeah, so it just as my report says, we just had a few things to help with the ease of use and improve clarity. And administration are working on a overarching fee bylaw, but we just felt that we could make this amendment now. And then once that overarching bylaw comes down the pipe, then this one would be rescinded.
Is there anyone willing to move first reading of this bylaw? Councillor Cromwell has moved first reading of bylaw 003-2024. Discussion. I'd like, okay, no one, I'll start it. I'd like to suggest that or ask if it would make more sense for a bylaw like this that amends fees to have a future dated effective date. So looking at the bylaw, having it come into effect the date that third reading happens seems very abrupt. If somebody's in the process of doing something, I wonder, does it make more sense to say we're going to do it as of April 15th or April 30th or May 1st or pick a day? But maybe not. I don't know what's historically happened, and
These amendments don't really affect the everyday business, I mean, they do, but we take fees daily. So whether the fee changes today or on the 15th of April, that's at council's discretion.
okay, so there's not somebody who was here yesterday and is going to come in tomorrow and go, well,
No, we take files daily and we process them. Usually the fee is kind of the last thing that we do. So I don't think that it would, like I said, I don't think it really affects our daily business. It's really, I guess, in council's hands, whether they think it's better today or the 1st of April or the 15th of April. It really
I'm
won't make
satisfied with that.
it
That's-
won't make a whole lot of difference to our staff and
Okay.
the function of this.
or to our ratepayers. Okay. Any further discussion? On the question of the adoption of the motion to approve first reading of bylaw 003-2024, all those in favor? Opposed? The count is 8-0 and first reading is adopted. Typically, we again stretch these out over 2 meetings. We can do 2 today, or we can do 2 next time. Council, do you have a direction? Councillor Holland, are you moving second reading? Councillor Holland has moved second reading of 003-2024. Is there any discussion on the matter? I'm suspecting not. On the question of the adoption of the motion to move second reading of bylaw 003-2024, all those in favor? Opposed? And the second reading is adopted. I know that we will not have unanimous consent for third reading, so I'm not going to ask. 7.1, Councillor Mims, you asked for this to be on the agenda. Is there a motion you'd like to make?
I'll make the recommended motion.
So
Yes.
Councillor Mims has moved to approve the updated policy 7202 airport fees as presented. Do you want to lead the discussion, Councillor Mims?
Yeah, I guess, I was just wondering when the last time the lease rates or the rental rates were looked at last time. 90 cents a square meter, is that okay, or should we be looking at raising that, or?
Through the chair to Councillor Mins, we do have recommendations coming with the full schedule of fees bylaw on what we suspect things should be. And again, we're going to get that to you in late spring for discussion to come into effect on January 1st, 2025.
Okay, and then the other thing is just, you needed to have that reworded for the, I guess, the contract company to come in and start selling avgas.
Yes, through the chair, this policy would dictate that you would set the price for an external company, which is not something most contractors would go with.
Right on. Okay.
So does that mean if we get an external contractor set up, you'd be back with amendments to facilitate that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Min, does that satisfy your questions?
Thank you very much.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, on the question of the adoption of the motion to approve updated policy, to approve policy 7202 airport fees as presented, all those in favor? Opposed? The count is 8-0 and the motion is adopted. Councilor Mins, you put 7.2 on the agenda. Did you want to make a motion?
No, I'll just talk about it first.
Is,
Well,
it's a surprise. This is new to us. Is council, is there any objection to not having a motion to discuss to begin with? Okay, seeing none, go ahead.
well, I guess I can make an amendment for.
Go ahead. What's on your mind? Councilor?
Yeah, yes. I guess a couple questions I have on here. Great job on, I love the lines through it. The whole thing. I do like that very much. Page 80, on the, I think it's fees. Page 80, but yeah. On the fees there, it's got additional camp unit, $15. And yet we also have a double stall at $50, 25 each. I'm just wondering, why don't we go just, if you want to put another unit in there, why don't we just go with $25? You camp in any other campground, like especially a provincial campground, and you want to put 2 units in there, you pay double. You pay for that extra unit. You don't get a break. And I don't know why we're under the fees there. We're given a break because you can put 2 units in this, right? Let's charge them double and be done with it. It's an additional unit should be $25. Or an unmanned site, additional unit should be $15. It's to me, that's, and we do the same thing on the seasonal ones. All of a sudden we get 2 units in a seasonal campground and we're only charging an extra $1,000. So we're doubling down on the people. Why don't we double down on the money? So that's what I'm proposing, is that we take the additional camping unit and just make it the same all the way across.
Director, do you want to respond to that? Councilor Holland, I see you and I'll come back.
Through the chair to Councillor Mins, as this has already been opened and we have already got seasonal payers booked, I have no problem with council setting fees at any time, but I would make the recommendation that since we are literally in progress, that this would be applicable to the January 1st, 2025 schedule of fees by law.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. It's just come up to my mind all of a sudden, because I do lots of camping in the summer. We go to other camp places and that, and we want to put 2 units in that stall. You pay double, you pay for the next stall. It's like, we're charging the next person over that's got a double stall. Double. So if you put 2 units in there, and I like it with if it's a tent on an immediate family, like the kids are coming out and they want to stay in the tent, great, no charge. You know, that's understandable, but
Say, are 2 tents 2 units or is it?
So, and yeah, that would be fine, being that we're under the gun here with already doing the seasonal thing, but we could change the one for the could we not for the single units, like not the seasonal units, but the
Through the chair to Councillor Mins, we have started booking regular campground sites as of March 1st. So if I can't speak to whether someone has, but if someone has, then you would be changing it mid-season open. So
okay, well, I'm not gonna.
There'd be an advantage to booking early.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, no, I'm fine with that. If we can look at changing that for January, that'd be great. So do I move on here? A couple more questions here. So, page 83. Got a couple questions on page 83. Number 3, guaranteed check-in. I don't really like guaranteed. I'd like to see that removed. I don't know if I've stayed at another camp place that actually guarantees that you're gonna get checked in at 4 o'clock. Check-ins from 4, checkouts at 2. And that's my thoughts. Remove guarantee.
through the chair to Councillor Mins, I believe this means that your spot will be available at 4 o'clock. We are guaranteeing to the person who's coming in that it will be ready for them at 4.
Yeah, but what happens if all of a sudden a big wind comes through and knocks a tree down? That guarantee is gone.
True.
So remove guarantee and just say you can check in at 4.
And this is an administrative procedure, so at the end of the day, I'm sure that the director and the CAO will take advice and hear the thoughts, but it's probably not sort of in our lane to fiddle with, but I think
It's-
providing advice on what we see and know.
As you can see, I read the policy.
You read the.
The other one that I have is suspension guidelines, number 1, same page, number 1. Discretion goes from campground manager to parks foreman, then automatically to the CAO. There's 2 people in between there that are kind of missed out.
Through the chair to Councillor Mins, procedurally, everything would come from the CAO and then be delegated down. So the CAO would be listed as CAO or designate in a policy. In the case of this procedure, we're just letting the campground managers know that they have that authority and their direct supervisor is the parks foreman. So.
Yeah, because I just found it operations manager and the director left out in between CAO to, like I can see a confrontation coming on where all of a sudden the camp manager wants to get rid of somebody, then it goes to the parks foreman. And to me, it looks like right from parks foreman, they're phoning the CAO. And it's like, are we dumping this onto our CAO that it doesn't need to go that far right off the hop. It should just go to the next.
Only
me-
because the process is a procedure that's authorized by the CAO.
Yeah,
Honestly, it's his problem.
yeah.
I mean, if the CAO wants to authorize a policy that makes him the be all end all, publish his phone number, call me for everything, not my problem.
Yeah,
And
no. As long as the CAO is okay with that, I don't know if the CAO has totally read all these policies.
again, that's up to him to do. Not my
Mr. Chairman, trust me, it would be delegated. So I have no problem with the wording,
Okay,
but I know that the director would deal with it.
okay, that's, yeah, no, other than that,
Do you have a motion you'd like to make, Council?
yeah, to sure.
Approve?
With the amended for January. If we,
Or do you want to leave that for, so the director said they're gonna bake that into the fees bylaw that they're working on?
okay, sure. So if you wanna,
Do you want to move the motion to approve the policy 7630 as presented? Counselor Mins has made a motion to approve policy 7630 as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? Counselor Holland, you did have your hand up.
Just for clarity for more than anything, back to the page 80 for the county campground fee schedule. So when we're talking about the additional camping unit, as you mentioned, that includes both unmanaged campgrounds and managed campgrounds, like that covers both? I'm assuming. I just see that there's, they've got unmanaged campgrounds, managed campgrounds, but then we have additional camping unit. I'm wondering if it was meant to be for the unmanaged campground. Just curious.
Director?
Through the chair to Councillor Holland, the the additional camping unit applies overarching to all.
Thank you.
Counselor Gerlich?
Since our recreational department, this area is subsidized, is not a break even or whatever, are our fees and whatever in line with other jurisdictions, like are we a bargain center or?
Through the chair to Councillor Gerlach, your generosity is obvious.
Perhaps something we should be looking at as well when we look at the figures for next year?
We have that in mind, sir, yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
It seems like you can't go wrong by being close to the provincial rates to me, but I feel like we're a bit of a bargain too, and personally don't object to our residents getting a bit of a break in our campsites, but if they're, if we're servicing non-residents, we should be at market rates at least. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none. If you're ready for the question is on the adoption of the motion to approve policy 7630, county campground fee schedule as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? The count is 8-0 and the motion is adopted. (7.5). Is there anyone prepared to move the recommended motion? Councillor Wallach has moved to authorize Reeve, Deputy Reeve, or council member to attend the seniors emergency preparedness event and give opening remarks on behalf of the county. Discussion wise, I added that to the agenda just to ask the CAO, is this normal? Is this typical in your experience in counties that, especially at a county event, that we would need council's approval for the Reeve to say, welcome to our event? And to me, this seems like a waste of time.
Mr. Chairman, that is not usual. Normally, if we're holding a county event, or even if someone is invited to give remarks on behalf of the county, that's usually part of the Reeve. Reeve's duties automatically, or if the Reeve's not available, Deputy Reeve. And if Deputy Reeve is not available, then the council member that has an association with that board or committee. So it's not normal to need a motion every time.
Further discussion, Councillor Chamzik?
I think it also gives that extra opportunity for extra advertising for events too, though, for having it placed in our agenda in advance. Just saying.
Other discussion? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to authorize Reeve, Deputy Reeve, or council member to attend the seniors emergency preparedness event and give opening remarks on behalf of the county. All those in favor? Opposed? Count is 8-0 and the motion is adopted. You don't have to be a senior, I hope, to attend. Intermunicipal collaboration framework. We are at item number 8.1. We received a letter from the minister asking for a survey to be completed. I added this to the agenda because I wanted to see if it would please council to direct the CAO to answer this survey, given that none of us were involved in the prior ICF negotiations. I'm not sure about the value we'd add. But it seems reasonable that, there's a response from Athabasca County. And looking for your thoughts. Councillor Anderson.
I make a motion to direct administration to respond to the survey on behalf of Athabasca County.
Councillor Anderson has made a motion to direct administration to respond to the survey on behalf of Athabasca County. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Mintz?
Do we need to discuss the questions or maybe the CAO discuss the questions with the Reeve regarding this or?
I don't. I personally don't know what value I like that I would add to this because we weren't part of that. Like, I'm comfortable with the experience of our management team speaking on behalf of the county from my, from my personal view.
Okay.
But if you would like to amend it to direct something more rigorous, I don't think this is a gigantic earth-shaking deal. It's just the minister's asked for some advice.
Okay, no, I'm fine with it. You betcha.
Any further discussion? On the question of the adoption of the motion to direct administration to respond on behalf of Athabasca County, is that how you worded it? All those in favor? Opposed? The count is 8-0 and the motion is adopted. We are 5 minutes from our first delegation. I would propose to you that we should take a 5-minute break and then be ready to start right at 10 o'clock. Unless there's objections, let's have a 5-minute recess. All right, I think it's 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock, we'll reconvene. We have joining us Mr. Jeff Alliston from Metrics. This is the pre-meeting in advance of the audit for our year-end financial statements. The discussion is going to take place in 2 portions. One of them is, of course, the open discussion, and then there'll be a brief closed session discussion with the auditor as well. Typically, Jeff, I know we've all met before, so maybe just in the interest of making it simple, I'll go around the table and introduce people. The ones you can't see with the backs to you, we have Director Whaley, we have Dill, who's Imtaz, there we go. CAO Beck, Recording Secretary, Ms. Blair, Communications Chief, Mr. Schenkelberg, Councillor Minns, Councillor Holland, Councillor Chamzik, Councillor Wallach, you know me, Brian Hall, we've got Councillor Anderson, Councillor Kapitanek is on her way and absent, then we've got Councillor Gerlich and Councillor Cromwell. If you can see them waving in the little screen.
You bet.
The floor is yours and we'll let you begin. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Am I able to? Oh, I can't share screen. Would I be able to share screen and pull up my presentation, or does everybody have it, I guess?
One sec, just figuring that out.
Okay.
I have mine on paper, so I'm not worried about it.
Okay, it should work now.
Oh, awesome. Perfect. Okay, here we go. That works. I don't know, does this work, or is that too
Yeah,
much?
we can
like,
see that.
Like, is that full on the screen, or? That's
That was-
okay?
It's probably better the other way.
The other way? Okay, just thought I'd ask first. Whoops, there's wrong button there. Better. Okay, so it's good like this then.
That makes it the biggest, yeah.
Okay, perfect, awesome. Okay, well, thanks for having me here today to discuss our audit planning report. So in turn here, this report provide a brief summary. We'll talk about materiality in the context of a financial statement, what it means. I'll go over a bit of our plan scope. So areas of focus, concern, what kind of audit procedures we're looking to perform in those areas. And then in addition to that, go over our timeline and then additional appendices pertaining to the 2023 audit. So in turn, really the purpose of this report is to promote effective two-way communication between yourselves, the counselors, and us as the auditors. Services that we'll be providing to the county would do an audit of the county's financial statements. We also prepare the county's financial statements based on the information we obtain. We'll prepare and certify your financial information return, which gets sent to the provincial government. We'll perform specified audit procedures over the county's local authorities pension plan, which is due by June 30th. And then as well as an annual review of your FCSS program. When it comes to our audit fees here, they're in line with our estimated cost in proportion to our quote. However, this year we do have additional procedures where it pertains to new accounting adoption. So the county will be looking to adopt asset retirement obligations. They'll be looking to adjust their financial statement presentation, portfolio investments, and as well as financial instruments. So what you'll see this year again is you'll see the adoption of asset retirement obligations with work being done by the management team that will be assessing and auditing. And then as well as when it comes to financial statement presentation, you'll see obviously asset retirement obligation disclosed there, and as well as financial instruments where it comes to identifying risks associated with financial instruments within the county's financial statement. So this is probably one of the larger accounting adoptions since 2009 when tangible capital assets were adopted. So we have estimated just some fee ranges in there that we think we'll be able to keep in line with the additional work involved in this year in the adoption of these new standards. When it comes to engagement team, so myself, been the partner on this engagement last few years since we became your auditors. I've worked in the municipal sector for over 15 years. I also sit on the emerging issues and professional development task force for the Government Finance Officers Association, so which I believe your county is a part of. When it comes to manager, Nichi will be the manager on the file, so she's been working with me for about 5 years. She has in-depth knowledge of the county's accounts as she's been involved in the engagement for the last 3 years as well. When it comes to responsibilities, just outline our responsibilities, which is to perform an audit in accordance with Canadian accepted auditing standards. So those standards require that we perform procedures in order to ensure, again, that the financial statements are free from material misstatements. It's management's responsibility for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. And just to note that those charged with Governance Council is responsible for overseeing the county's financial reporting process. When it comes to materiality, so we use 4% of expenses as our benchmark. So roughly based on last year's, about 1.3 million is where we'll be determining the materiality of the set. From there, we set performance materiality to be 75% of planning materiality. So if we were to have additional or a number of adjustments that we were recommending to be made by management that exceeded our performance materiality, but were still below our planning materiality, we'd be advising management to hopefully think about recording some of these entries in order to get our materiality levels below a performance level. So although we do have a planning materiality, again, we kind of work at the performance level and giving ourselves a gap had there been additional errors that were potentially missed while performing our procedures. So again, also in turn, materiality really pertains to the users of the financial statement. So main users being yourselves as counselors, ratepayers, the government of Alberta, so organizations, individuals with vested interest in the financial performance of the county. So what we're saying is if your expenses were to increase or decrease by about $1 million, a user of the financial statement may have a different view or outlook on the financial performance or results of the county for the year. When it comes to the plan scope here, so here's where we outline the approach that we're going to take in specific matters and areas of focus. So I'll just touch on a few of the important ones. A real important one is management override of control. So here management's in a unique position to potentially perpetrate or manipulate the financial statement. So potentially adjusting accounts to conform to budget, adjusting accounts to increase your annual surplus. So there we use data analytic tools to identify journal entries that exhibit characteristics where potential manipulation could be being made by management. We then test those entries to ensure that they are valid operating or business entries, and then determine from there if there's any additional work after that. Revenue recognition is another main area here. We want to make sure revenue is being recognized once services have been rendered. So when you receive grant funding, there's restrictions attached to those. We want to make sure that the restrictions and obligations have been met before the revenue is being recognized. So we're not just getting money and recognizing it as revenue. We got to make sure those performance obligations are being met. So there's a lot of work that gets involved or done in that. Other key area of focus here, a couple pages here is tangible capital assets. So we want to make sure that your tangible capital assets are accurate. So again, you know, did you purchase tangible capital assets that were maybe accidentally expensed that needs to be recorded as capital assets? Do you have assets that potentially are impaired that no longer provide economic benefit? Or do you have assets that have been recorded as assets but should actually be expensed? So we spend a lot of time in there looking at your amortization policy, recalculating amortization, testing additions, deletions in the year, as well as looking at repairs and maintenance accounts. Also, in turn with that, a lot of your grant funding for capital is associated in there. So we always want to ensure that the costs associated with that are then being funded either through your tax revenue base, your reserves, or through your government transfers. New area is the asset retirement obligation, so public sector 3280. So again, the risk there is that we're missing assets that should be in there. So we're definitely doing an assessment to make sure that management can provide you know, completed results of potential asset retirement obligations that are within the county. We want to check the reasonableness of inputs and calculations to make sure that the estimates are based on the best information to date. So again, a new kind of area of focus here with the asset retirement obligation. Requests of those charged with governance, we just ask that you know, you let us know if you include any instances of actual or suspected or alleged fraud that you're in turn advising us. My contact information used to be in this report. I know it's in the audit findings report. That'll come later, but if you have to get a hold of me, you definitely do so. When it comes to timeline, we performed interim work previously in the fall. Our year-end work will start actually next week. From there, we're hoping to have drafts presented to council for the last weekend of April for approval. And then if there's any debrief that needs to happen after in May, we're definitely around to do that. When it comes to appendices, so just required communications. So just saying that we are independent of a county. Our engagement letter is in Appendix 2. When it comes to management representation, we'll get that signed at the end of the audit, which outlines that information was forthcoming to us. And then other communication of results is included in our audit findings report at the end, which in turn summarizes our audit plan. So we'll go over areas of focus there. Did we find any areas of weakness or concern that should be noted to council? We'll identify other areas such as your accounting practices, policies, estimates, financial statement disclosure, provide any other matters that we had noted during our audit. I'll skip through the engagement letter here, and then Appendix 3 here outlines new and revised accounting standards. So again, asset retirement obligations. So establishing recognition criteria for AROs and the subsequent impact of tangible capital assets, establishing measurement, initial and subsequent measurements, and establishing disclosure requirements. So as noted in our plan scope, asset retirement obligation will be a significant area of focus. So we'll be assessing the completeness through the work done by management. So again, it's any legal or environmental obligation that requires the county to decommission or complete of an asset once it's done its useful life. So a common one is asbestos. When it comes to buildings, you could potentially have lead in items that you have. You could potentially have other assets that the county has that are required to be decommissioned in a specific way. So those are the items that we're looking for. We're looking for costs associated with that so that they can be, again, put on the financial statements of the county. So it's not that these liabilities didn't exist before, but there was no requirement to record them within your financial statement. So knowing this information definitely will allow council to assess, well, hey, we have X amount of obligations still. We didn't know about these. How are we potentially going to fund these in the future? Do we have the money to fund these. So again, it's about bringing those forward so that decisions can be made on these items in the future. Foreign currency translation, so that's a new section as well, but there'll be nothing associated with the county's financial statements. Same with when it comes to the portfolio investments. When it comes to financial instruments, you'll see additional disclosure there when it comes to the financial instrument impact on the financial statements. So when it comes to investments, potentially any debt obligations, those type of items there. And then as well as financial statements, changes where it comes to there'll be new schedules. So there's a new schedule for remeasurement gain losses, which track change in fair market value of financial instruments without them having an impact on your statement of accumulated surplus until they're sold. So that's a new schedule being added. So in turn, there's also new additional accounting standards coming next year. So one for public-private partnerships, a new one for revenue recognition of providing additional disclosure requirements, and as well as any purchase of intangible assets. So definitely not as big of an impact next year as this year, as we've seen quite a few sections to be added. So that's kind of it for my audit planning report. I can definitely take any questions that council has at this time.
Colleagues, do you have any questions? Not yet. I guess I wrote a couple down, Jeff.
Mhm.
On page 18, can you just clarify for us who's driving the adoption of these new standards? Like, where does that come from? Is that the?
Well, technically, management's supposed to provide I guess the initial assessment, so the scope of the work done when it comes to asset return obligations, the assets that were identified, the estimates for there, and then we then audit those items for, are they in compliance with the handbook? Do they meet
The fact that the standards are changing, so that's the public sector accounting.
Oh,
body
public
that's
sector
setting that
accounting,
up.
but yeah, so that's national, right? So this is all across Canada. Yeah, that's the.
And so then just in collateral to that, why would we not, you said these other ones are coming up next year and they're pretty minor, like PS 3400. Is there any reason why that wouldn't just be done this year and get, like, is there any disadvantage to being an early adopter?
No, you can elect to early adopt county standards that are in the pipeline. It's not, I wouldn't say it's maybe common practice. Usually they're kind of adopted the year that they're required to, but you could definitely early adopt if the county wanted to.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Under inventory for consumption, it says we will vouch purchases of inventory items and recalculate the ending balances. Could you explain a little bit more about how that process works?
Yeah. So if you have, like on hand items like in public works, stuff like that, we usually get a listing of what makes up your inventory, like for consumption. And then from there, we then recalculate items based on, are you using the proper framework? So are you using average cost base or are you using first in, first out method? So making sure that the costs are correct for those, and then as well as verifying the amounts on hand with the counts that are provided by the county staff to make sure that the inventory is complete. Also, if you have any like gravel on hand, we usually get assessments of that from the engineers to ensure that that amount is accurate based on what's been estimated or counted at your end for that as well.
Other questions? I mean, I guess I also wondered how did, and you might have answered this last year, Jeff, and I apologize if I've forgotten, the 4% materiality threshold. How do we get to a 4% materiality threshold versus a 3.5% materiality threshold or 2%? Because like on a $30 million budget, $1 million seems like a lot of money to be.
Yeah, so we use, we kind of use standard, I wouldn't say standard, but we usually are within about 3 to 4%. So we feel that if we have, fewer entries and we kind of have a history with the organization and the finance department's been, pretty stable. I know Nicole's been there for a bit now, and we kind of tend to have a 4%. We have used 3% in the past, or we'll use a lower performance materiality level. So say 65% versus 75. So it kind of depends on our history and kind of what we're seeing. We will adjust those if we need to based on when we're performing our work, if we're noting a bunch of errors, but we feel that like 4% for the county based on the users right now would be a good sort of, I guess, benchmark to start with. So
Thank you.
Yep.
Again, any questions from council? No? We do have a item on the agenda 4.2 to go into closed session briefly. So this is probably the moment to do that. It would be in order to take a motion to enter closed session. Councillor Mins has moved. Is there any debate on that motion? Seeing none. The question of the option of the motion to go closed session, all those in favor? The motion is adopted 9-0. It's 10:35 and I'd like to reconvene council meeting of March the 12th. We had a motion to come out of closed at 10:29 AM by Councillor Chamzik. The count was 9-0, and then we had a 5-minute recess. The next item of business on our agenda is item number 8.2, calendars. Shall we start with Councillor Chamzik?
Hi there. Just some calendar changes. Tomorrow will be the Boyle Library as it changed. And then Thursday will be the town library. Also, Sergeant Surprizzi is hosting his town halls on the 26th in Boyle, 27th in Wandering River, and the 28th in Grassland. And other than that, for April, the 16th for Boyle Library and the 18th for town.
Do you want to go through those again? I wasn't keeping up with you, Councillor. You're a little
Okay,
fast.
so tomorrow is Boyle Library.
Okay.
The 14th town. On the 26th, the town RCMP Town Hall in Boyle. 27th in Wandering River, the 28th in Grassland. It's all 6 PM. And then in April, the 16th will be Boyle Library and the 18th Town Library.
Councillor Holland.
For the town hall, are they offering a virtual? Do you know if they're offering a virtual
I
opportunity?
do not believe so.
Okay, thank you.
That's it? Let's go from you, move to Councillor Hall, and we'll work around.
Okay, thank you. April the 11th, community transportation at 9 AM. April the 12th, the ALTSC at Basque Landing Trail Steering Committee MOU meeting. April 19th, the Basque Landing Trail Steering Committee regular meeting.
Okay, Councillor Mins, do you have any to add, take off? Okay. Councillor Cromwell.
Nothing to add, but the county library board on the 4th of March was canceled.
Councillor Gerlach. Nothing to add. The FCSS one and Blue Heron are on there correct? They're on there correctly. Okay, Councillor Captain.
Blue Red was canceled for this Thursday. And I just got an email today saying it's rebooked for April 11th. 10:30 AM.
At 10:30?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Athabasca Regional Economic Development
Oh, A-Red?
is, yeah, April 11th at 10:30. And the meeting of that same committee on the 14th of March was canceled.
Yeah.
Okay, any others? Okay, Councillor Anderson. Nothing. Councillor Waller. I feel like we just did these. That's what, okay. Any further discussion on calendars? Seeing none, Councillor Cromwell has made a motion to adopt the calendars as amended. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to adopt the calendars as amended, all those in favor? Opposed? We are You're in favor, 9-0, and the motion is adopted. Sorry, go ahead.
The calendars, is it our turn to host joint or tri-council? And should we be booking that?
We do the fall.
Okay, I thought it was us next. It was town next. Okay, thank you.
I think there was some jokes about that at the meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One
Cielo.
thing I should have added, we did receive feedback from the Parliamentary Secretary of Health that it's got some openings on Monday, March 18th in the morning. So 8:30 to 1. That's kind of before RMA starts, but on that Monday, he's got openings.
I think most of the people that are there are booked into EOEP courses. What's your wish? Would you rather just send a letter to him and the minister?
8:30 to 1. He
Wouldn't
did
allow-
say he might be available 3 to 6:30, but he might get pulled away to go for a vote in assembly. So he's actually in session. So
3 to 6:30 range. I mean, the late one is probably better, but I would be just as personally happy with the letter. Council? So the consensus is we'll work through a letter. Would someone like to make a motion to, or,
Can we see if he is available?
throw your microphone.
If he is available for the evening, if we can book something, if he gets canceled, whatever. Otherwise, we send a letter.
Okay.
he said he may take some meetings from 3 to 6:30. That day, however, he will have to be available to run for a vote in the assembly.
Yeah,
So if you would like to schedule something and then there's some risk of it being canceled.
yeah, that's fine.
Then we could go to the gallery and watch the vote. That would be exciting, but
So yeah, can we book some, can I make a motion to book a meeting between 3 and 6 PM on
Probably.
Monday?
between 4:30 and 6.
Can we, can I make a motion to book a meeting with him, in the evening? Well, whatever.
Councillor Wallach is making a motion to ask for a meeting with the Parliamentary Secretary for Rural Health sometime after 4:30 on Monday.
After 4.
Any further discussion? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to ask for a meeting after 4:30 Monday, all those in favor? Motion is adopted. I suppose we should make sure that it clarifies Monday, the 18th. Other questions? We're 10. Moving on, 10.1G, Councillor Holland, I highlighted your name, you have a report.
Thank you. I'll just give quite a high level report, being that we have a delegation coming in. Just a report on the 2 Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee meetings that were held March 1st and March 8th. The one on March 1st was to discuss the memorandum of understanding and to get a draft created, which was done. That was held at Sturgeon County. We had several councillors as well as CAOs that represented the municipalities, as well as other representatives from those municipalities attend. The MOU was created, sent out to a draft was created, sent out to the CAOs on March 6th so that they had time to do a review and recommendations that they thought might be appropriate. And then the next meeting to go over that will be April 12th. The Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee meeting, the regular meeting was on March 8th in TrailNet. It was a hybrid meeting, so we were able to attend virtually. Both Member Chamzik and I attended both of these meetings. This one in person, one via Zoom. There's quite a bit of conversation that took place. We went through the discussion on how to best handle the action item list that is aging. So that will be coming together and being updated very shortly. The MOU draft, of course, was discussed and the next steps that we just talked about there. We talked about maintenance agreements, that we were looking at and we'll be, coming back together to figure out what's the best way to handle that situation as well as other, management plans. Just signage was discussed as well, that's throughout the trail. So there's different things that are happening there with regards to bridge signs right on through to, all sign needs, so everything from enter at your own risk, et cetera, et cetera. So all of those are going to be looked at throughout the season to make sure that those things are up to date. We discussed the active living grant that will be discussed this morning, I would assume with our delegation, so I won't go too far into that. We mentioned the TCT Spring 2024 Trail Care Grant, that extension was given for the deadline there to March 7th. And I think I'll leave it at that. The other thing, of course, as always, is constantly updating for the master plan that we're talking about. That is going to be the master plan itself, not redone, but updated from 2010 to 2010. So an additional, I'm thinking it's called an addendum or something along those lines. Did I miss anything? Got it pretty, yeah, there's quite a bit of discussion, but if anybody has any questions on that, please don't hesitate to ask.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. You mentioned an MOU meeting. Is that an existing agreement that's being updated, or is that a new document that's
A
being generated?
brand new document. So it's a municipal memorandum of understanding between all municipalities. So it's a high level, and it will be basically using the master plan as a guide, but it's all municipalities will be engaging in that MOU.
Okay.
No other questions? Okay. Thank you for that report. The next item, we have Councillor Chamzuk speaking to 10.1S County Library Board.
Unfortunately, we didn't make quorum. Our annual reports are in and submitted. Working on policies, everything will be hopefully ready to for approval in May. And that's about it for now for county library update.
You guys have been doing a major overhaul of policies, it seems like.
Indeed. Yes, it has been. And it's been a wonderful wonderful learning curve, and through our Northern Lights, being able to utilize some of those services there as well has been an extreme amount of help. Do you want me to go right into FCSS?
Unless there's questions on the library, seeing that there's none, 10.1T.
Yesterday, we had our meeting. We're getting ready for the FCSSAA conference, spring conference, and in May, they're planning for the one in November. Kim Lewis did her presentation on programming for being the seniors advocate, including programs with federal programs, provincial programs, you know, stuff like subsidized housing, the Alberta Senior Benefit. And in case you guys don't know, Kim is the community dementia ambassador for the region as well. She also runs a multitude of programs for caregivers, elder abuse workshops, and facilitates her senior symposium in the town and village. And through the New Horizon Seniors Program grant through the town, we were also able to help fund the emergency preparedness event this Friday. And I just thought I would showcase some of the fine work that FCSS does. Thank you.
It would be appropriate to take an order to receive the updates from committees for information. Councillor Minns has moved. Any further discussion? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to receive those reports. All those in favor? The count of opposed. Count is 9-0 and the motion is adopted. Okay, we have 10 minutes before our delegation. We have 4 items left on the agenda, 4.3, 4.4, and the items in number 11. CO Beck. Is the items under, you have the item under 11.1, can we handle that in 10 minutes? Or would you recommend we just postpone these till after?
I recommend we just postpone them and deal with them together instead of splitting them up, Mr. Chairman.
Unless there's objection with council, shall we recess until be ready to roll at 11 o'clock for the trails, folks? The next delegation is 11 and we've covered everything else in the agenda except 4.3 and 4.4. Morning, it is 11 o'clock and I'd like to reconvene the March 12th meeting of Athabasca County Council. To begin, I'd like to welcome our delegations from the trails groups, the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee and the Athabasca Recreational Trails Association. Thank you for joining us. There's some water on the table and normally our practice is to introduce council. And then once that's finished, we work our way around and the floor comes to you and you can take over and share your information. On your right, we have our CAO, Mr. Bob Beck, Recording Secretary, Ms. Blair, Communications Coordinator, Mr. Schenkelberg, and then Councilor Mintz.
Morning, Rob Mintz. How you doing? Good. Baptiste Lake Island Lake area.
Good morning and welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Tracy Holland, as we know, Division 5, east of Athabasca, that way.
Good morning, Kelly Janzik, Division 7, Grassland, Atmore, Proserpine areas.
Good morning, Camille Wallace, Division 9, north of the river.
Brian Hall, elected in Division 4.
Ashton Anderson, I reside in Division 3, which is the Boyle area.
Hello, Natasha Kaptanik, Division 2, Collington, Minoka, New Pine Creek.
Good morning, Joe Gerlach, Division 1, which is the Rochester Prairieville area in the south part of the county.
And good morning, Gary Cromwell, far north, Brainerd, Blue Jay, Wandering River area. Thank you for being here today.
And so again, just make sure your microphones are on and we've saved some time for questions at the end. So the floor is yours.
My name is Lynn Jewell, and I'm the president of the Athabasca Recreational Trails Association.
And I'm Linda Strong Watson, Executive Director of Alberta TrailNet Society. So I would like to take a few minutes just by way of introducing not only myself, but Lynn and her group in terms of our how we fit into the trail picture here in Athabasca and area. And for myself, Alberta TrailNet Society is Alberta's Provincial Trail Council. So we work with communities throughout the province on their trail development projects. This obviously was one of our key initiatives. And we also represent and are responsible for implementing the Trans-Canada Trail in Alberta. So again, the Athabasca Landing Trail is part of the Trans-Canada Trail picture. And it's a project that we've been working on for approximately 20 years now. And then I'll let you talk a little bit, maybe for a moment, about your group and your area of responsibility.
Okay, my group that I belong to started quite some time ago. So I came in about halfway, I think I started in about 2013. I've been here on it for about 10 years. So most of what was developed on the Athabasca Landing Trail was done a little bit before my time. A good section of trail was built from Collington. Well, we call it the Berkman property, but that's not how we should refer to it. But that trailhead right through to the old Collington Highway, then it crosses the highway there and then comes into Athabasca and it follows on Dale McQuaig's land and then onto the rail bed and then into the town. So that's the biggest development that we've done. And Alberta TrailNet spearheaded 2 bridges being put in Collington, one by Wilfongs. Then a trail was built from there to one of the main streets in Collington. And then another walking bridge was built by, you have to follow my fingers, okay? By Barb LaChance's property. And we fenced that off for Barb and a walking bridge was put in there. That's the biggest portion of the trails that we have worked on. Yeah, that I am aware of. There's other projects in mind, but we haven't started on them.
We understand that council likely has a number of questions that they have for us. And I have provided a bunch of materials, which I think may have been distributed to council. TrailNet first got more involved with the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee, which Athabasca County has also been involved with for a number of years. At the request of the not-for-profit trail organizations in this area, who were, and this is all the way from Edmonton all the way to Athabasca, they were struggling in terms of being able to take forward Trans-Canada Trail projects. And they weren't working together, they were just individual groups here and there that were working towards one particular goal. They came to us and asked us if we would assist in bringing together a group of the affected municipalities as well as the trail groups to try and come up with a plan and work together towards actually implementing and developing the historic Athabasca Landing Trail. So ever since that time, we did reach out to the municipalities, to the counties, to town of Athabasca, to Fort Saskatchewan, and to request if they would be interested in forming a steering committee and working with all of us. And we did get support for that. And we've been moving forward ever since that time. And it kind of goes forward in fits and starts, depending on the availability of funding. And TrailNet has been the primary agency in sourcing provincial and federal grant funding for our projects along the Athabasca Landing Trail. We work and we report to Government of Alberta and specifically to the Minister of, at this time, Tourism. The name changes all the time. We get a certain amount of operating funding from that ministry, and we work with them closely on our trail development projects. And we closely follow provincial guidelines in terms of trail standards and, some of the other information and materials that we've worked with them to put together to guide not only our, but trail development across the province. I sent you a couple of pieces of information. One was a bit of a report on the external funding contributions to the Athabasca Landing Trail over the years. And so this one just kind of captures a bit of a picture of the amount of funding that's gone into each of the municipalities along the Athabasca Landing Trail over the years. So, and I've actually, in this particular case, I've listed a few of the projects. Town of Athabasca, we've obviously done some bridge engineering and building here, and that total is 582,000 more or less. In Athabasca County, again, we've done a number of bridges. We've done some trail development from Athabasca to Collington, and obviously we've done another bridge up in the North Collington, and a trail that goes from that bridge over to the east side of Collington. And so the total spent to date, just from these particular grants for these projects, is 1,288,000 essentially. Westlock County, a total of 279,590. Sturgeon County, we've spent, and this is with the recent development of the Woodridge Trail included, which will be opening likely this June, $2,221,961. So a significant amount of funds have been raised, and we're obviously grateful to the funders who've been providing that funding. And we are continuing in that, in the pursuit of federal funding dollars, especially most recently, we received a grant for $50,000 for trail planning and design and public consultation for the historic section of trail between Minook and Perryville. So that's a project that we are planning to take forward this spring, and our hope is that we will be working closely with Athabasca County on that project. the other thing I wanted to just mention, because I know that there's been some questions with regards to something that we call the Athabasca Landing Trail Municipal Grant Fund. And so those funds are being held by Alberta TrailNet at present and have been since we first started to gather those funds together. The municipalities have been paying $5,000 a year in support of the work of the steering committee for a number of years now. And those funds are really intended to support the work of the steering committee, and that's our work on applying for grants, on things like, in terms of my there is no charge against those funds for any of Alberta TrailNet's time. We do, however, if we're up on a project, for instance, somewhere and we're doing a trail inspection on a project that's underway, we will charge our mileage and possibly a meal to that grant. But apart from that, those are minor amounts of funds. But I did want to report that I have received, I haven't yet distributed this, but from our accountant, she's indicating that at present, there is approximately $98,000 of money that's been built up in that fund. And I've also provided you with a copy of projected upcoming costs and potential expenses against those funds. And those funds, and this would be likely a maximum for the upcoming year, 24-25 would be approximately 32,000. So that's just sort of a financial picture of where we're at, and I would welcome any questions from council about any of this information. And we're here to to talk about it and answer those questions, obviously. I think also one of my understanding is that one of council's questions are what are our asks or hopes in terms of our time with you today. And first of all, I want to thank the county for all the support it's provided over the years and for the participation of council members on the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee. It's been extremely important to the success of our projects. And I also would very much like to recognize Tracy and her support and leadership in terms of some of the discussions that are happening at present with regards to potential memorandums of understanding and getting some of the other sort of critical foundational information together that kind of can inform our way going forward. And I think one of our key requests, obviously, is for continued support and involvement from Athabasca County on the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee. We would also like to request its continued financial support to the work of the steering committee, which to date, I mean, we've been requesting $5,000 each year in terms of supporting that work. And again, that includes for things like the steering committee being able to travel to and help oversee projects and the areas where we're doing or proposing to do trail development. And for the expenses of steering committee meetings, which are relatively minor, they really involve a luncheon, maybe some coffee, but Alberta TrailNet, we're in a government building, the Percy Page building in Edmonton. And we don't pay any meeting room rental or anything like that, and our staff costs are free. So we're not incurring any costs for those kind of things. But at any rate, I also provided a copy of a PowerPoint presentation, which I didn't think we had time to sort of go through in detail today, but I did want to take your attention to the second page of that, if you have those copies with you. I would look forward sometime to actually doing a full presentation to council about this whole thing, but I wanted to particularly mention the projects, that are highlighted in yellow, and those ones that are encased in a little blue box on here. because these are our areas of focus over the coming years. One of them is the Rochester Staging Area and Trail. There's a small viewing lake area at Tuatna Lake, a wildlife viewing area that we'd like to do a bit of a trail connection to that viewing area. As I mentioned, the Perryvale to Minook Trail is one of our focal areas coming up immediately this spring and summer. Associated with that is a staging area at Minook, and council and staff will, I think, remember that we had initially proposed a staging area at the north end of the historic trail. And staff were concerned with regards to the safety of public access from where we were proposing that a small parking area be placed and the connection to the trail. And so we will be coming back to council with a request that we instead locate a small, maybe 3 or 4 vehicle parking area and place for a signage kiosk at the south end of that historic section of trail. So that's what is referred to in terms of the Minook Trail staging area. And this one does not so much apply to the county, but it does imply a connection to the county trail, and that's the South Athabasca Bridge. We call it either the South MRM or George's Bridge, which is requiring replacement. That is a significant project, and we haven't yet identified the funding that's going to be required to replace that bridge. So I wanted to give Lynn a bit of a moment also, because I think there may be other questions with regards to costs to maintain the trail. And Athabasca Recreational Trails Association has obviously been at the local level the key entity that's been responsible for a lot of the maintenance work on the trail. And Lynn, do you want to just speak for a few minutes about that?
Well, I must admit, we haven't spent an awful lot recently on the trail. It has kind of held its own. We've had to go in and do a few repairs, and we've just done that. Like, we haven't charged our committee anything to do that. We've gone in with our skid steer or our tractor and leveled stuff off, and we've placed signs up, and we've placed the initial cement blocks that are on the Wilfong Trail. And we did all of that. Like, our group was not charged that by us. That was volunteers. Right now, we know that there needs to be some maintenance on the trail, because unfortunately there's a bridge out on the road, and some people are accessing that trail with their vehicles. And so we do have access now. We've got some more cement blocks that we'll be able to get, I think, on Thursday, that we're going to block off the north and the south end of that part of the trail, like from the road up just before the bridge that's out on the old Collington Highway. So we'll block it off, because it's still frozen, so there's nothing. I mean, they're not damaged anything more yet, but they will be. So we will be blocking that off. And we actually have a donation from Inland Cement for their reject Lego blocks, which are just fine for what we need. We don't need pretty ones. Rejects are fine. So we're going to be doing that. But in the past, we've asked for a trail maintenance grant from Trans-Canada Trail. I haven't this last year, the year before, because the county has gotten that trail maintenance grant of $1,200. And I think last year it might've been $1,500. $1,000. Okay, $1,000, sorry. It was 1,200 maybe I'd got at one time. And so we, there again, we went out with the county counselors and some other volunteers and did some trail cleanup. But Collington itself really helps on this trail. There's somebody in the Collington area that mows the grass from the bridge to the main bridge there, but closer to the trailhead to the street in Collington. I have no idea who it is. And I've actually gone around and asked those people who it was. Still have no idea, or nobody wants to own up to it, but they do a terrific job. So Collington itself is really helping with this. the village of Collington, and we did have more work to do around the walking bridge by Barb Lachance's. But now, because of the vehicle access that was on the trail from Workman's to that road, and I don't know the number of it, we need a little bit of gravel on that now because they have pounded out. We had a material down and then a honeycomb product on top of it, and we filled it with sand, and they have pushed it out. So it needs to be, so we need about 3 or 4 loads of gravel on that right now to bring that up to it probably will be just fine for quite some time again. And then a little bit of gravel on the walking trail from the bridge, the Wilfong Bridge, that goes up the hill a little bit, just because it washes there. Because when we put that trail in there, we had to have it 6 inches deep. We put fabric in there and 6 inches of gravel on that. And then in a couple of places you can see where you can see a little bit of fabric now. And it's just from the downhill slope washing the stuff out, you know, so we need another load of gravel on that. So that's the only expense at the moment that to upgrade what we've already done, to upkeep what we've already done. That's what needs to be done right now. But in the terms of money, when we have spent money there, and it's probably our fault, we didn't necessarily say this is for the Athabasca Landing Trail, as opposed to we also work on the Peace River Trail. And so our expenses are kind of lumped together. So I don't, but I know that the Athabasca Landing Trail, we actually haven't spent a lot of money on it in the last few years. $500 to $1,000 a year, maybe $500 a year. Yeah. To do what we've done so far, to keep up that part of the trail. That's about all we've done. Yeah.
So I think just picking up where Lynn left off, you know, much of the costs when it comes to trail maintenance are relatively low. And a lot of that is because of volunteer involvement. But where we have gotten into it in a few areas, obviously, is for instance, a non-engineered bridge, which the one we refer to as George's Bridge, or the South MRM Bridge, which is a bridge which has to be pulled out and which is going to have to be replaced with a proper engineered bridge for that location. All the other bridges have been engineered, and one of our costs, which is going to come up, you know, every 4 or 5 years, is going to be for an engineering inspection on those bridges. It's one of the things that we need to plan for, as you know, as a cost that, and our engineer has indicated that every 5 years it should have an engineering inspection on it, just to ensure that everything's good on the bridges. But I'm cognizant of our time, and I would like to just provide the opportunity for any questions from council, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions? Councillor Bullock.
Morning. What do you think your average use is per year? Like, how many people do you get on the trails?
You know, we actually don't have any trail counters on the trail. This has been raised in the steering committee, that it's the kind of thing that would support, you know, even things, for instance, like our grant applications and that kind of thing. It's good to know usage, but we do know that it has been increasing. And we are hearing more and more from people who are traveling long distance along the trail. You know, they're traveling all the way from Edmonton and other areas along the trail. And we're seeing that reporting on social media about their experiences along the way. We know there's people that are traveling across Canada that are using the trail. One of our projects that again needs to be completed this summer is to contract someone to go out and do, we want to do a proper GPS of the trail. We want to record the locations of all the signs. We want to ensure that the trail is properly signed all the way from both directions, so that people who don't know the area are actually able to find their way along the trail and know that they're in the right place and that kind of thing. So I think that we've been discussing at the steering committee the possibility and where, you know, trail counters could potentially be located, but there are none at present along the trail.
Camille, I don't know, but when you go through Athabasca now, the parking lot where there is, like, especially in the summertime, there's always people parked there. There might not be a lot of people at once on the trail, but I do know, like, I've met people on the trail, and how far are you going? And they're going to a place called the Bailey Bridge on that trail. And it's exactly 7 kilometers from the parking lot to the Bailey Bridge. They turn around and they said, it's just a marker for us. We know that takes us X amount of time to go there and come back. But, and people are walking their dogs on it. Like, we were out on it in the fall and we went up with other people on it. It's used more than we realize, and not all the way necessarily into Collington, but I do know we've had an incident with people walking all the way from Athabasca to Collington, and there were some dog issues at the one spot where they were attacked by dogs. So they're walking from Athabasca to Collington. Maybe they go into the bar and have a beer there and walk all the way back. I don't know. I'm not going to ask them, but I mean, that would be a good, I think that'd be a good idea. But they are actually doing it, like people that are doing that, but they actually are quite often. If you go drive by the parking lot, there's somebody parked there close to where you walk into it, and there are people on the trail. I don't think there's many skiers on the trail because it's not tracked, right? Most cross-country skiers like to go on a track, but so we're not going to do that either,
They also like snow.
but it is being used more and more all the time, must admit.
And it is also being used in the winter months. We know there's cross-country skiers and snowshoers out using the trail. And I wanted to just make a comment, we get pressure from time to time about why doesn't this trail allow ATVs on it? Many of our people who live in this area use ATVs, but because this is Trans-Canada Trail, and Trans-Canada Trail does not allow and will not fund trails that allow ATVs on it. Obviously we've gotten a great deal of money from Trans-Canada Trail for some of these projects over the years. And at the time when we first started out and we're doing the master plan for the trail, we did a number of community meetings all the way along the trail to gather public information on the types of use they would support on the trail. And across the board, the response was non-motorized. So again, that just supported the realities of, being part of the Trans-Canada Trail, quite frankly. And I think one of the, there's other challenges obviously around motorized use. For instance, there's no ATV club in this area, is my understanding at the moment, and that kind of thing. But I did just want to make a comment about some of the background with regards to it being a non-motorized trail.
To follow up on that then, the Peace River Trail, which is north of the river, is that not part of the Trans-Canada Trail? And does that, I thought ATVs were permitted on that one.
They are permitted on it, and there are 3 grandfathered trails in Alberta where ATVs are allowed, and it's because when Trans-Canada Trail first started, it allowed ATVs, its policy allowed, but their funding is coming from the federal parks department. And so you can see where part of that impetus is coming from with regards to, a bias against motorized. But at any rate, so the Peace River Trail, the Iron Horse Trail, and the Grouard Peace River Trail, which is a continuation of the Peace River Trail towards Grouard. Those trails, and actually I'm going to back off. The Grouard Peace River Trail is a non-motorized trail, but the North Shore Trail is also a motorized trail. And so those three trails are exceptions to when they changed their policy, let me put it that way.
Okay, that makes sense. Councilor Walt, you had your hand up.
And just on the grant funding, generally, does the steering committee take care of all the applications for grants for the committees and whatnot?
We do most of them. Alberta TrailNet staff do most of them. They're brought forward to the steering committee. We discuss them. And obviously when we identify a project going forward, a part of that discussion is, okay, where and what kinds of grant funding are we going to go after, quite frankly. So, but in terms of actual filling out the forms, we'll pull in information from our council members in terms of the areas, and we're obviously out there doing inspections and that kind of thing of our proposed areas. and gathering, just basic information that we need to even put together an application. But the funding application has gone in typically from TrailNet's office for many of these projects. And the funds come back to us and we're managing the funds, paying, contracting the work, overseeing the consultants and contractors and paying them and that kind of thing. And responsible for reporting back to the funding entity in terms of the spending of their funds that they've provided.
Can I just remark on for our group, our funding strictly comes from grants. But no, I shouldn't say that. Our funding comes from casinos. Our membership fees are minimal, so we're not going to count that as it. So we work casinos, and then we can apply for a grant, let's say through CFEP, and they're always a matching grant. Trans-Canada Trail will only, even if we asked for a grant for Trans-Canada Trail, will only fund, let's say, for maintenance, and they want something quite specific to only a third of a project or whatever. Like they just came out with something that up to $75,000, Trans-Canada Trail for projects up to $75,000. The most they would put into that is 15. So as a trail maintenance provider, we have to come up with the rest of the money. So we work casinos and we get that about every year and a half, every 16 months. So and we try to save up as much as we can from that to apply for the small funding stream from the CFEP grants, because that's up to 125,000. So I try to save 60,000. I've just applied for one January 15th. We have $71,000 in our bank. We have 60,000. We're hoping we'll get a matching grant of 60,000, and we have a casino at the end of this month. And so our funding is totally different for the maintenance on the trails. Yeah, that doesn't come from here. Yeah.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you. And just to follow up as well, through the steering committee, we're also encouraged, all councillors are encouraged to go back to their municipalities as well and apply. For example, the Trails Care Grant is a perfect one, is an opportunity, because each section of the trail, depending on where you are able to apply for those particular grants as well. So it's also a municipal responsibility that's encouraged for as many of those types of grants that we can take advantage of.
One of the key values of the municipal involvement on the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee is that collectively, through all of our organizations that are involved, we actually have quite a powerful voice when the municipal voices are added in terms of applying for grants from the provincial and federal governments. So it's like a very important tool, quite frankly, that we have the ability to bring to getting awareness of and support for the fact that this is a regional initiative and one that's important to more than just one entity.
I'm looking for any other questions, or Councillor Mins.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this forward. Regarding the motorized use on the trail, especially between Athabasca and Collington, let's say, is it getting better? People not using it, or people trying to get down to the trail more often with quads and dirt bikes and all this stuff?
I'm actually not totally sure, but we haven't seen the same traffic with them because they can't come into Athabasca anymore. Do you know what I mean? They can't go as far as they used to, like they used to come into town. So that has stopped some of that, but there are private properties all around the trail, right? That they can use their quads and they'll go onto the trail to go to the next part or whatever. But I don't think it is as strong as it once was. We haven't heard the complaints that we once did. So I think we've had gates up and locks on them to cut them off, but I think it's slowly, that's a nuisance after a while, like we don't all, but and we, so we order 12 locks every year sort of thing or whatever. And so we are slowing it down. We're not going to say that it's going to stop entirely. But it has slowed down considerably. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chelmsford.
Just for my own clarity, so all the upcoming signage kiosks, engineering would come from the 32,225 from the 5,000 annual contribution to the ALT municipal grant fund, correct?
Yeah, the sign, well, I'm just going to, most of our kiosks that are currently up and the signs that that are in them have been paid for from the Alberta Historic Resources, because of the Athabasca Landing Trail being, a provincial historic site. They have been providing grants, and I would say the grants are sort of in the range of $8,000 or $9,000. And those grants cover the cost of our consultant who develops, researches and develops the historic text and other text for the signs for construction of the kiosks and the kiosk roofs and for installation of them. So that's what has been paying for them. We're now entering, I think, a stage where we're having to replace signs because over time they do fade and sometimes get shot up and things like that. So our cost to replace those signs will come from the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee Fund.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to commend the work that has been done on this trail today. It is unbelievable how much has been accomplished and how much work that has been done. So thank you all very much for doing that, and the volunteerism as well as for Alberta TrailNet's time and efforts and the project planning and the design. And there is still so much left to do. It's far from over, far from fully developed. There's still so many different sections that need to be developed. But what we have right now is absolutely still very amazing. And a lot of people comment on it. I'm really excited actually and wanted to mention 150 years this trail will be in 2026. And so this is something I think that we all really need to look at. It will draw attention, not only locally, but nationally, but internationally, as we've seen on the trail. So I think it's something that we really need to consider and look at and promote as far as I'm concerned. Personally, I think it's super exciting also to mention, it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, there was a YouTube video that came out on the Fort Saskatchewan, the underslung pedestrian bridge that goes across the North Saskatchewan. And that really is the heart of the Trans-Canada Trail, as they mentioned, because three major trails go there. And one of them is the Athabasca Landing Trail. So to have that connectivity now, to be able to go walk literally from Athabasca all the way to Fort Saskatchewan, to me is an amazing feat and something that we should all celebrate. It's huge. So if you get a chance to look at that video, it is on YouTube. It is absolutely amazing. It was a $5.5 million project that was provincial, federal, and municipal as well, that looked into that. So the connectivity that's happening, the development that's happening, I think is super exciting. And I want to thank you again all for all the work that you've done towards this. And I look forward to continuing the work as well. I think it's very important and well worth our time and energy, and it's a huge asset to have. So thank you again.
Thanks, Tracy. I would like to just mention, it's one of those things that if you build it, they will come. And there's growing public awareness and things like the Fort Saskatchewan Bridge, you know, the historic signage that's up along the trail. These things are attracting attention, right? And so as people become more aware of it, you've got a couple of very large population centers sitting just to the south of you, and traffic on this trail will only increase as people become more aware of the opportunities to go.
I would just like to mention one more thing. I'm sorry I interrupted. When we first finished the trail from Collington to, that one stretch of trail, to like the McQuaig land, let's say, we had an opening of that trail, and TrailNet has on their site and that different things. And we had an opening for it. We had a luncheon at the Collington Community Center. I mean, we had some wagoneers that came up with their wagons and they transported people. And some of the people, because they went on the website and saw it, and they said, well, what can we do today? And they came up from Edmonton. There was 2 families that came up from Edmonton, went on the wagon ride, then went and had a luncheon with us, and we chatted away with them. They said, yeah, what can we do today? And they did see it. So it is out there for more and more people to see all the time.
And with regards to the users, on the trail, I'm seeing it all the time. Whenever we go down, whenever we spend time on it, there's always someone else there and they're always so appreciative of the work that's been done and the work that's, happening now to bring it up to date and to maintain it and update the signs and all of those things. We're hearing it all the time. We're also seeing as well, several times last summer where there were people bicycling from Edmonton all the way through. And so more and more people are enjoying this trail and they're finding that they have all of these open areas and these open sections of the trail that it's driving more and more interest. It's spreading out. And I think that's just absolutely amazing. So thanks again.
Questions, all the questions have been on my left. Questions there.
Okay, well, I'll just make a statement. I'm sure yourselves have noticed, but myself, an uptake in I want to use the word advertising of the Canada Trail in general after Melanie Vogel's amazing 4-year experience. And I did get the pleasure of meeting and briefly hosting her here in Athabasca along with my friend Sherry. And I remember you came and met her as a trail coordinator to get her equipment to, I think it was to Slave Lake or Smith at that time. But COVID had put her off for about a year and a half stuck. And we followed her daily online, and still now I see, people talk about even the journey from Edmonton to Athabasca, or, it's like to kind of try to do something that she did. So I see that being in the future, something that can be really, I don't want to say played upon, but appreciated and used in marketing, basically. Yeah. And Milo.
Yes. Well, thank you for your support of her, because I think she really appreciated it.
Councillor Skrillex or Cromwell? No. To me, it seems like trails are really a huge opportunity for, increased tourism in the region and the well-being and enjoyment of the people that live here. And I know that there are both groups, as you've said, that make use of them. And so I think it's important to recognize what a valuable resource they are in the region. And it seems like a lot of work has been done by a really small group of committed people. And I appreciate the commitment of your teams, and I think our council does as well. I don't know if there are any other questions from council, but I do appreciate you coming today. This council will discuss this again at a future meeting. And so in terms of, the main couple of the big takeaways, you said the asks from the committee are the continued support and involvement in the steering committee itself, and the continued financial support that you see out of the county.
Yes, and if I may, Paul, I'd like to also request, we as we go forward on some of these projects, we know we're going to be attempting to see if we can't get some easements in place where we're having to cross private lands. And I would also request if county would discuss whether if we're successful in those, the county would consider holding the easements since it's not really, it's outside of TrailNet's really area of responsibility where we want to undertake easements within, other land bases and that kind of thing. I will just say we already own a whole bunch of abandoned rail lines in this province, and that's more work than anybody needs, quite frankly.
I forgot to ask the one question that I did have, and that's, you've said on the Manook to the Perryvale to Manook portion, you've got funding for design, but it needs to be matching funding. So you've got the grant. Is there the matching funding in place too?
We got a grant, a federal active transportation grant for $50,000. I haven't put out any RFPs yet, so I haven't got any quotes in terms of what it's going to cost. We currently have identified that grant required, and I think it was $15,000 of matching funds, which at the moment TrailNet has put in of its own funding. Okay. We may turn around and go after TransCanada Trail for some matching funding. We haven't really looked at that yet, but.
Okay, so it's not dollar for dollar. It's just, I was reading that on your. Thank you. Councillor Skrillex, you got a question, please?
Yeah. Like from Manook to Perryville, is there an identified route or is it the old landing trail or is it down the highway or down the railroad right away or?
It's actually a combination of on the old historic trail. Portion of the historic trail is, it's registered, it's an easement actually, registered on title and held by the province, specifically by Alberta Parks. So that's the section that we're most focused on in terms of the planning design work. We've been out there and we know it needs a bunch of culverts and some improvements just to manage wet areas and that kind of thing. But it's actually just an absolutely beautiful natural trail that is being maintained by a number of the adjacent landowners at present. But there's sections that are on road, and we also want to look at maybe some opportunities to move for possibilities to move certain portions of that off-road if those exist.
Okay, good, thanks.
Councillor Hall.
Just if I may add to that, I thought it was really cool because I was looking into more and more about the alignment and how it all worked. And the section that's going through the wilderness, as we'll put it, through that private land, it actually leads you to the road plan 1909T, which is the old landing trail survey that you can pull up online, which is from 1897. It is the neatest thing ever, and I'm a kind of freak when it comes to the history, but it's the exact same section, and we'll see it on we'll see it upcoming, I would imagine, on some upcoming maps. But yeah, it is really cool to see that it dates back and is being still held under that road plan.
You can see that you've got a passionate council member here.
Council, last call for comments, questions. Thank you all for making the time to come and speak to us. I know it takes a lot to organize and to be here and talk. And I think we've all speaking for myself, at least, I feel better informed, and I'm glad you took the time to come out and share part of your morning with us.
Well, thank you very much for your time today and your questions.
Thank you.
I'm only been over by 20 minutes.
Not quite. 50.
I think we should recess for lunch, and we'll determine the coming back time after. It's 20 minutes after 12. We have 3 items left, 4.4 and closed session. I think I spoke to the CAO and he thinks we've got time to address the 2 closed session items. So it would be in order to take a motion to enter closed session. Councillor Cromwell has moved. On the question of the adoption of the motion to go closed session, all those in favor? The motion opposed? And the motion is adopted, and that's at 12:21. And we're live. Councillor Cromwell, you have a motion?
I make a motion to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public School Division and request they make the complaint dated February 12, 2024, an official code of conduct complaint, so it may be investigated.
Can you read it slower so that I can make a note to repeat it, please?
Motion to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public School Division and request that they make the complaint dated February 12, 2024, an official code of conduct complaint so that it may be investigated.
Councillor Cromwell has made a motion to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public Schools to request that they make the February 12th, 2024 complaint an official code of conduct complaint so that it may be investigated. Discussion. Councillor Holland, the floor is yours.
Is it possible to put an amendment there for Aspen View to also identify the parties?
It's necessary in order for it to be a complaint.
Well, we should probably specify that because our motions seem to be lacking in a
Complaint,
few
an
areas.
official code, so it may be investigated and to identify the parties. Is that what you'd like? Okay, discussion on the amendment or the motion. We'll vote on the amendment first, but Councillor Gerlach, the floor is yours. Put your mic on, please.
That we give them the opportunity to, not that we're asking them to request. Can you read that again, Gary?
Leah, could you read Ms. Blair, could you read the motion the way it's recorded, please? What I had written was to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public Schools and request that they make the 12th of February, 2024 complaint an official code of conduct complaint so that it may be investigated, with the amendment adding the words "and to identify the parties involved."
And all we're doing by that motion is requesting, and if they choose not to, then
You've spoke to the motion, Councillor Gerlach, you have the floor still.
No, I'm good for now.
Councillor Chamzik, the floor is yours.
Would it suffice you, Councillor Gerlach, to put the option of in there instead?
Put your mic on, please.
When you're requesting them to put in a code of conduct, you're requesting that they do something. And I think we should be giving them the opportunity that if they want to have it investigated, that they should think about, that they should have that option as to whether or not they want to. Probably not explaining this well. But we shouldn't be asking them to requesting them or directing them to do that. They've been reluctant to do it to this point. But if they do think that it's worthy of being investigated, that they should put in a formal code of conduct complaint. Otherwise. But. I don't know. I'm not. Like, I just feel nauseous when I think about this and how we've dealt with things in the past and how we swept things under the carpet. It all depends who it is and whatever. We don't deal with things in a fair, straight on manner. And I'm just really frustrated with it. We got to start acting responsible, ethical, and we're just not doing it.
can I ask a point of clarification from the CAO?
Please.
Did that letter get sent to them that we talked about at the last council meeting yet?
Yes.
Councillor Anderson, your hand is up.
Thank you. We've had former code of conduct complaints that council deemed weren't a qualified complaint or didn't meet the requirements and that they wouldn't be investigated. And I just cannot believe that we are now saying something doesn't meet the requirements of a formal complaint and we're going to request that somebody formalize that complaint. I just don't see that as being a reasonable path forward.
Councillor Holland, you've had the floor, so we'll wait till everybody else has had a chance. Is there anybody else that wants to speak? I mean, honestly, the code of conduct has a lot of stuff in it and, you know, it states that members have a right to express opinions that as long as they're sure they're not perceived as representing the county. And we don't know anything about this. In the absence of a formal complaint, there is nothing properly before council. Council has, in my view, undertaken a code of conduct investigation outside the procedures aligned in the bylaw. And I think that it's time we focused on our strategic planning and the priorities of the residents in the region that the residents sent us here to this table to work on. Because I can tell you that, you know, this is wildly different than how we've handled other issues in the past. And this continued, I don't know what you call it, squabbling and disruptive behavior is certainly not why I sought my seat. We've dispensed with items that had far more detail with named individuals and named events, and we've just dispensed with them. And now the fact that we're soliciting a complaint, I can't, that we're enclosed. And the fact that we're, you know, ignoring the advice of the investigator and soliciting complaints, to me, is beyond reasonable, but that's where we want to go. I will be voting opposed. Is there anybody else that hasn't spoken that wishes to speak? Councillor Minns?
I guess on this whole thing is we had a letter, received a letter regarding this complaint, and without any name being in it and stuff like that, we jumped ahead and we've gotten some information regarding if it can be investigated or not, and it can't be, and so we're done. It's pretty well straightforward. I don't know, unless something else comes in, so let's move on. We're done. It's and I want to really, you know, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I'm going to. I really want to thank Aspen View for this. Thank you very much.
We have an amendment on the table and a motion. Are you ready for the question on the amendment? Everybody's been around once. Council, is there any objection to going around a second time on this issue? Councillor Wallach has objected. Our rules are one cycle to keep things orderly and processed. I would then request a vote of council. If you would like to suspend the rules, I guess, to cycle bound a second time. Councillor Cromwell, you were in the session. Was the idea that that's a 2/3 vote when we do that?
Sorry, say that again.
So the rules are to one cycle. When we did that meetings presentation, when you suspend the rules, I think he said seek a 2/3 vote, and very much in the way you do anything else that's. Councillor Holland, you were in
I
there.
thought it was 50% plus one for that.
That would be 2/3 here.
Same.
Because I think.
Are you able to pull the procedural bylaw not
Procedural-
section that says it's 2/3, or is it?
Well, suspending the rules is not in the procedural bylaw that I
Right.
can remember.
So then that would be a majority vote as far as Robert's rules, I believe, are concerned.
Well, Councillor Gerlich. So you want to address that question, or you want to go around again?
No, I want to ask a question of the CAO. So what you're saying is without a formal complaint code of conduct, this will not proceed. Or that was,
Mr. Chairman, I can't comment on that.
but that was the effect of the motion, that if there is not a formal complaint coming forward. So is there still an opportunity to put forward a code of conduct complaint?
Whether it's the current item or any other item, there's always an opportunity for someone to submit a code of conduct complaint.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. Is there a desire to go around a second time and suspend the rules? Those in favor of cycling a second round of conversation, say aye or raise your hand. Okay, those opposed? Councillor Gerlach, how do you vote? Okay, the motion is defeated on the question of the adoption. of the
Recorded
am-
vote, please.
On the question of Councillor Cromwell's asked for a recorded vote. On the question of the adoption of the amendment, to add the words "and to identify the parties involved," all those in favor? Opposed? Motion, the amendment is defeated. On the question of the adoption of the main motion, to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public Schools and request that they make the 12th of February 2024 complaint an official code of conduct complaint so that it may be investigated. All those in favor? And opposed? And the motion is defeated. Can we take a 15-minute recess to come back at 5 minutes to 1? And to enter, we'll do that when we get back. We'll take a 15-minute recess. Is 5 minutes to 1. I think we said we were coming back about this time. Jordan, are you? It's all good to go? Okay, so we are at item number, agenda 4. We're at agenda item 4.4. Our normal, thank you both for joining us. We have Dr. Alex Clark and Dr. Catherine Swindlehurst here from Athabasca University. Dr. Clark is the president and Dr. Swindlehurst is the chief growth officer. There is a presentation for closed, but we might as well do the introductions briefly, and then we'll take a motion to go into closed session and carry on. On your right, my left, we have CAO Bob Beck, Recording Secretary Ms. Blair, Communications Coordinator Mr. Schenkelberg, Councilor Mintz.
Rob Mins, Division 8, Baptiste Lake Island Lake area.
Hi there, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Tracy Holland, Division 5, which is east of Athabasca, Amber Valley, Paxton, Parkview areas.
Kelly Chamzik, Division 7, Grassland, Atmore, Crossvita.
Hello, Camille Wallach, Division 9, north of the river.
It's good to see you again.
Good afternoon, Ashton Anderson, Division 3, which is the Boyle area.
Good afternoon, Natasha Kaptanik, elected in Division 2, Collington, Minnook, and New Pine Creek.
Good afternoon, Joe Gerlach, Rochester Prairieville area, gateway to the county of Athabasca.
And good afternoon, Gary Cromwell, far north, Wandering River, Brainerd, Blue Jay area. Thank you for being here.
So you could say the gateway out of the county of Athabasca. It would be in order to take a motion to enter into closed session. Councillor Mins has moved. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to enter closed session, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, the count is 9-0 and the motion is adopted.
I move that council supports Athabasca University's campus revitalization proposal.
Councillor Anderson has made a motion to confirm Athabasca County's county or council? Athabasca County support of Athabasca University's campus revitalization proposal. Discussion. Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to confirm Athabasca County support of AU's campus revitalization proposal, all those in favor? Opposed? The count is 9-0 and the motion is adopted. There is no further business on our agenda, and as a result, I will declare the meeting adjourned.